Some new research this week by researchers at LIS and The Upshot, a New York Times website covering policy and politics, has found that the American middle class is no longer the most affluent in the world. Now, why is this so startling? Let's have a look.
The American middle class is no longer the most affluent in the world. While the wealthiest Americans are outpacing many of their global peers, a New York Times analysis shows that across the lower and middle income tiers, citizens of other advanced countries have received considerably larger raises over the last 3 decades. The numbers were based on surveys conducted over the past 35 years. The poor in much of Europe earn more than poor Americans. In European countries hit hardest by recent financial crises, such as Greece and Portugal, incomes have of course fallen sharply in recent years. The income data were compiled by LIS, a group that maintains the Luxembourg Income Study Database. The research shows the struggles of the poor in the United States are even utterly worse than those of the middle class. A family at the 20th percentile of the income distribution in the United States makes significantly less money than a similar family in Canada, Sweden, Norway, Finland, or the Netherlands. 35 years ago, the reverse was true. According to the survey, 3 broad factors appear to be driving much of the weak income performance in the United States. First, educational attainment in the United States has risen far more slowly than in much of the industrialized world. A second factor is that companies in the United States economy distribute a smaller share of their bounty. And finally, governments in Canada and Western Europe take more aggressive steps to raise the take-home pay of low and middle-income households by redistributing income. One large European country where income has stagnated over the past 15 years is Germany, according to the LIS data. Policymakers in Germany have taken a series of steps to maintain wage growth. Even in Germany, the research suggests that the poor have fared better than in the United States.
Joining us now to talk it out is Fresh Outlook's money guy, Paul Oster. He's also the CEO of Better Qualified. We also have Dr. Susan Schurman from the Rutgers School of Labor Relations. And via Skype, Paul Schwada. He is the director of Locomotive Solutions. We welcome all of you. And Paul, you're a first-timer, so thanks so much for joining us down there. Okay, the first question that I have is, were you surprised by this research that they came out with? We'll start with you, Dr. Schurman. Were you surprised when you heard some of this research, and what struck you the most?
I wasn't surprised. I've been following this, I suppose many of us have, for a long time. However, I do think it's important that the headline, I think, was a little misleading. If you look at the charts, you can see that although other countries are growing in comparison to us, only Canada at this point in time has reached the same sort of a level as the United States at the level they're measuring.
But
let me just say that, but to put that in context, I mean, we were number 1. And we were number 1 coming out of the Second World War when everybody else was destroyed. So we've been number 1 for a long time, but those other folks are catching up with us. And they're catching up for reasons I assume we'll talk about when we talk about education, et cetera. But,
absolutely.
So I think we need to be clear that they haven't passed us. They're moving up fast. It's really about the level of inequality buried in those numbers more than the median income.
And Paul Oster, you're of course our money guy. Why is this so significant when we hear a study like this? I mean, it's one thing we're not number 1 anymore, as Dr. Schurman said, but why is it so significant?
Well, it's who we are. It's our, our identifier. It's the masses. It's most of the people fall into that category, and you can label it however you want, but the country was built on the middle class. And when you talk about education and jobs and the housing market, those are the things that continue to pull us down. And like Dr. Schurman said, those numbers really are indicative of the gap closing within the other countries. But again, when the median household income has only risen 0.3% in the past 14 years, while everything else has exploded, including government excess. I'm sure Dee Dee would love to weigh in on that. you know, it's apparent that we have to do something about it, because the trend is still going the wrong way. It's not getting better right now, although, you know, there are people that want us to believe that, but it's not.
Well, I want to actually talk about a quote from our president. Our top priority as a nation and my top priority as president is to reignite the engine of America's growth, a rising, thriving middle class. Dee Dee?
Really? Really? That'd be great. It'd be good if we got started on that, because we're sort of behind and we've got Canada beating us. It's not a good day. I mean, good for Tom Ford and company, but really the president is not doing the job.
On the other hand, if he and George Bush at the end of his
I'm not
career hadn't
finished. Let
stopped
me finish.
that.
You had your turn. Let me give me my turn. Look,
Well,
I'm just saying
you're
that, look, the middle class and small businesses, they have the government hindrance. The taxes are too high. The regulations, it's killing the middle class. So, yeah, it needs to improve, certainly. And a lot of people made some mistakes with that, but Canada's getting their act together.
I do want to go down to Chicago and talk to our Skype guest. That's Paul. And Paul, here's a question. You've been listening to us, but what does it mean today to be middle class?
Yeah, I think it's critical that we look at what Dr. Schurman mentioned, which is the inequality buried in the macro stuff. And the inequality that I live in, that the businesses I work with live in, is that there are two types of jobs essentially in America. There's what I would call a platform job, and there's a fill-in job. And the platform jobs are what are critical. They're the jobs that have stable wages, stable hours, and some type of reasonable benefits package. Every family, in order for the fabric of our society to work, every family needs one of those platform jobs out of however many jobs they can hold. The problem, I think, and the reason I'm not surprised by this study, is that the numbers are simply recognizing that our mix has changed. The platform jobs are still there. They're still doing fairly well. I have some concerns about the lower end, the labor and manufacturing end of that. But the mix has changed with this burgeoning service class. And those jobs are just the fill-in jobs, the ones that as long as somebody in the family has a platform job, it's okay to make sandwiches at Subway or work at Walmart or wash dishes in a hotel, whatever. But because the number of those jobs has risen so substantially over the years, we're simply saying that median or that average drive down, 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 while the rest of the world continues in a pretty much more socialist perspective, where they really want to keep helping the bottom of the society be stronger.
Well, they cited in the study several reasons as to why. One of the reasons why was some of the governments, other governments, have taken aggressive steps to redistribute the wealth and the incomes. So do you think that that's something that needs to be done? Of course, Dee Dee, I see you shaking your head. Dr. Schurman will go to you right afterwards, and then Paul, you're going to weigh in.
Yeah, I'm waiting for Paul to back me up on this. Look, you know, it's just a story to me. The New York Times, what a shock. It just seemed that, you know, they're picking on the 1% again. And then talked about the Walmart CEO making so much money. We're good for him because he created a lot of jobs. So I think that, you know, the problem is these small business owners, and I'm sure Paul would agree, they're suffering because of too much tax, too much regulation. That's the problem. Lay off the small business owners. That's the middle class.
Dr. Schurman, I'm sure you have a rebuttal on that.
Well, it's true that other countries tax everybody more heavily and redistribute so-called more to keep the bottom from sinking all the way to the bottom, and it's worked extremely well for them. They have a different view of taxes. They really think about taxes, if you think about Sweden, Germany, all of Scandinavia, think about taxes more as investment so that everybody does well. And we have a different view on taxes in the United States. The majority has a different view. I don't share it. But more importantly, I think, right now, the level of investment that all of those other countries are making, and that's just the industrial countries. Doesn't look at doesn't look at China, Brazil, India. The level of investment that they're making in their education systems, public investment, fueling a just gigantic leap in the number of their young people that are gaining college education skills. We've been disinvesting.
Well, indeed, education was one of the factors that was cited in this study.
For people my age, we still Americans are the leaders in terms of baccalaureate education. 16 to 24-year-olds, not anymore.
That's right.
Paul, you agree with that?
I do. You know.
And I also have another question for you. Overall, how does this affect our economy?
Well, it's bad. So the redistribution of wealth can happen without giving the money to that lowest tier. You know, go back to you give a man a fish or teach him to fish. Don't give him the money. Create jobs that he can work at. Like Paul in Chicago was talking about, we need more platform jobs. So get the regulations out, get the government out of business, get back to a capitalistic society, and we would be much better off. Taxation is certainly a part of it, but that's only a small piece. The education piece is the thing that scares me the most. When you look at, the baby boomers are probably the last working class to have any type of financial security. When our middle class has no financial security, they're not sure if their pensions or Social Security is going to be there for them. They're working just to pay their bills. They're not working to, forget about a nest egg anymore. I don't think it exists for most people.
And Paul in Chicago, our Skype guest, you've been listening to us. Do you agree with all this?
I'm not going to go all the way with take off all fetters for the business owner, small or large, and everything will be okay. Europe has two things going for it that have really helped the bottom portion of the economy, at least the lower half of the economy, stay.
Oh.
And it looks like we may have lost Paul on that, but there was another part of the study that said that the wealthy Americans are outpacing everyone else, but the middle class, obviously, that we're talking about has fallen.
So I just want to challenge Paul a little bit on, we have the most capitalist economy in the world. We have the least government regulation of any of the countries listed in that study.
In the study, yes.
So if the answer to this problem is unfettered capitalism, why are we doing worse than all of those other countries that have much more regulation, a much different system of redistribution?
Well, I think when you talk about what those regulations are, there might be fewer in place, but I'm a small business owner, and I can tell you over the past 20 years, I have seen more regulations put into place that are making it harder. I won't even bring up Obamacare and insurance and what you have to do as a small business owner in order just to stay in business. That's why you've seen so many small businesses go under.
So every other one of those countries has national health insurance.
Yeah, so I don't necessarily disagree with it. I just think the way that it was implemented and the other things that are surrounding the timing of it.
I think the timing was another big factor.
Yeah.
That instead of concentrating on the economy, he was concentrating on Obamacare.
Right.
And also what Paul said, I think we need to push as well. Manufacturing, it just died here. Everything's going to Mexico.
Yeah.
Everything's going somewhere else.
Yes,
That is a huge, huge element here. And we need to try to bring it back to our country.
We're going to just take some final thoughts from Dr. Schurman just on this topic. Any final thoughts?
Well, again, buried in the data about our median income for middle class people is a growing inequality of wealth. There's more money going to the top, and not just the 1% that Dee Dee's talking about. It's also going to people like us in this room. Those of us who have invested in our education, who've got those not just platform jobs, but very high-end platform jobs, we've done great. But the other 85% are falling, and we got to figure that out.
All right, some very interesting insights, Dr. Schurman. Always a pleasure to see you from Rutgers University. We appreciate your insights. Don't go, everyone. The lightning round is next, where we take a look at some of the lighter topics of the week. Keep it right here.